up and we will not lose. We will fight till the end at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land, whatever the cost. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the streets.
Zelensky's speech was so inspirational, and he spoke the most basic terms, that of freedom and sovereignty for his nation, and how his people are willing to fight hard to ensure that the Russians are stopped in every chance they can. And so this is where we're at. We've got the weak leaders and the strong leaders. And sadly, here in the United States, what we're seeing is complete weak leadership coming from the White House. And so it's important for us to continue to speak up against the Biden administration when we feel they're not doing the right thing, and applaud them when they're doing the right thing. But at this point, the world is looking at the United States and saying, what's going on? Where's their leadership? Why are they not standing up and doing more to help the Ukrainian people? But I want to talk about this and much more with Senator Roger Marshall from the great state of Kansas. We'll be right back with this great interview. Welcome back to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. I'm really happy to have our next guest join us, Senator Roger Marshall from the great state of Kansas, obviously where half of my family still lives, Senator, and it's great to have you on. Thanks for being on America Uncanceled.
Yeah, Mercy, great to be with you. You're right. Matt and I are raised probably about 30 miles from each other, and I'm just honored to be on your show.
Well, let's get started. I know there's so much going on internationally. We're watching these images of the Russian military basically attacking a children's hospital, a maternity ward. Zelensky and many in the Ukrainian leadership basically saying and accusing Russia of war crimes. What are you hearing as you're in the Senate halls? Basically, what are you hearing from your colleagues in terms of how bad is this going to get between Russia and Ukraine?
Right, Mercy. Well, I just walked out of a meeting with our entire conference and an updated briefing on the situation in Ukraine. And certainly I agree with you. President Zelensky is a modern day Braveheart. His bravery, the courage of the Ukrainian people inspire all of us. And I think we're all in agreement that we should be doing everything that we can be doing. And right now, just like you mentioned, there's a lack of leadership from the White House. We're trying to get these MiG-29 jets to the Ukrainians to help defend their own skies, and the White House is clogging this up with semantics. We're looking for leadership. We're looking for action, and you're going to see the Republicans really step forward even stronger in trying to lead and get this White House to do more to support them. It's a grave situation right now. These are certainly crimes against humanity that Putin needs to be held on trial for. We're doing everything we can, though, to help the Ukrainian people.
So there's always this conversation. We saw this coming from Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the no-fly zone topic. So I have found this to be an interesting debate between what I would say the neocons saying we definitely need to put the no-fly zone in place in Ukraine. Obviously, President Zelensky is requesting a no-fly zone be put into place with the help of NATO. And then you have what I would say some Republicans and Democrats, as well as the Biden administration, saying if there is a no-fly zone put in place, this is basically leading to a full-fledged war. What are your thoughts on that? And also, what are you hearing on the ground?
Yeah, well Mercy, I think that most of us agree we don't want any American boots on the ground. And saying that, we have 102,000 American soldiers being moved towards that Ukrainian-Poland border right now. So we need Europe to step up and put their soldiers on that front line as well. Again, not going into Ukraine. As far as a no-fly zone, I think that we should be supplying President Zelensky and the Ukrainians with all lethal force that we can, giving them more MiG jets, maybe even the A-10 Warthogs. There are lots of weapons we can give them to help them defend themselves. But I really don't think we want American pilots on American planes controlling that no-fly zone. We don't want World War III either.
But let's remember with the MiGs, my understanding, at least what I've learned from some of these military officers, is that they have very limited capabilities, maybe 2 bombs that can, that they can that come out of these planes. But in addition to that, they're really the only ones that the Ukrainian military they've been trained on. So they wouldn't even know maybe how to fly an F-16 or something along those lines. But it sounded to me that the Pentagon is basically saying that moving these MiGs that it's not tenable. So do we know where the Pentagon is going to go with this? Are they basically stopping efforts of having these MiGs get to the Ukrainian military?
Absolutely. The administration is holding this up. They're showing a lack of leadership. Look, whether we're sending them Stingers or surface-to-air missiles or jets to fly, I think that's all lumped into the same basket as far as Putin is concerned. We're committed to getting those jets over there, but I'm going to add the A-10s to this list as well. They do have pilots that can fly our A-10s. We have some A-10s that are destined for mothball as well. That would be a perfect weapon in this particular war that's going on. And also, more of the UAVs. It seems like the Turkish have some type of a special brand that's working really well over there too. So the Pentagon is holding this up via the White House. Total lack of leadership coming from Joe Biden once again.
So let me ask you, I think it was about a day or two ago, there was a Wall Street Journal editorial talking about how basically it was President Obama who really, during his time as president, didn't really have much hope in the Ukrainian people. In fact, he didn't supply the weapons or the javelins that the Ukrainian military needed at the time. He pretty much gave up on Ukraine, knowing that it was just a matter of time that Russia would be aggressive and move into Ukraine. So do you think that we just have a bunch of these Obama types that are back in the Biden administration basically dictating this type of policy that we're seeing happening right now, in terms that we've been so far behind in basically being on offense instead of on defense when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Mercy, you nailed it. I call this the Biden administration. Just recall last time when Putin invaded Crimea, what did Obama do? He sent blankets. That's what his response was. And then, of course, you notice that Putin did nothing while Donald Trump was president. But as soon as we get the weak Joe Biden, the pushing from behind, the reactive Joe Biden, never proactive, Putin saw a weakness. And when he saw the debacle in Afghanistan, he saw a weakness as well. So certainly President Obama and Putin underestimated the courage and the bravery of the Ukrainian people. Huge underestimations on both of their parts. And I think that's the inspiration right now. And a big difference between now and years ago is we're seeing all of these crimes against humanity playing out basically live on the television as people send over their own videos. And this is what's really calling, rally the forces and helping give us the political strength to help those folks out.
You bring up such a great point, because this is really probably the first war where social media is going to play probably a very big role in shaping the war, the narrative war. I mean, obviously in Russia, they have such a tight hold in their country in terms of what media can come in and the Russian people can have access to. I think I was looking at a poll just yesterday showing that about close to over 50% of the people in Russia agree with Putin and the invasion of Ukraine. They're obviously not getting the images that the rest of us are getting. And it just shows that authoritarian control, that state-owned media, can really impact what the people are watching. What are your thoughts in terms of you're seeing Russia really ensure that, they kicked out CNN, they kicked out BBC, they're getting rid of jailing independent journalists, getting rid of them expelled out of the country. How much longer? I mean, based on all the economic sanctions that have been in place, not only by the U.S., but from Europe, how much longer will the Russian people be like, wait a second, we're going to keep supporting this war despite the fact that we're feeling the economic pains because of the sanctions being put in place?
Yeah, well, Mercy, I think, number one, that this is playing out in real time, and these crimes against humanity are being recorded in live time as well. We were talking in conference today about Radio Free America, what type of broadcast and what we can do to help support that as well. But when these Russian soldiers don't come home because they're dying, maybe 5 or 10,000 have died so far, I think those family members are going to realize what's going on. And I do think that we can get some smaller satellites in there to help feed the people. We had the same problem in Cuba not too long ago when Cuba shut down some of the internet there as well. So we have to do the best we can to communicate with the Russian people, because I do think when they realize that they're killing people that are basically their cousins and ancestors, they're going to say, wait a second, we didn't sign up for this. And we're seeing lots of Russian soldiers surrender already. That big convoy that you're seeing, most of that's been literally deserted because the Russian soldiers don't have any food or fuel. So they're into the forest. They're out there in those small communities in Ukraine, basically foraging for food now.
Wow. Obviously, Senator, you're a doctor, and seeing the humanitarian crisis component right now, I think is just another piece of this that is just so difficult to watch. You're talking about close to 2 million refugees already, people who have fled Ukraine, so many of them women and children. I mean, how are these other countries like Poland going to be able to manage such a large influx of refugees?
Yeah, well, Mercy, they can't. And to your point, they just can't do it. My family and I have done some mission work across the world and been in those situations where we didn't have anesthesia, where we didn't have IV fluids, trying to put a leg back together under a spinal block I put in myself. So it is tragic situations. And this is where the more and more people will die, not just from the war, but from the fallout of the war. There'll be the infectious diseases will pop up, dysentery, dehydration, malnutrition. But you're right. And we'll need all the people of the world to help come together to help out these refugees. I really think our churches out there are the best solutions. I don't think the American government does a great job with humanitarian, not nearly as efficient as our Christian organizations can and do.
So are we looking for this humanitarian crisis or more aid coming from Congress? I know there's a bill that's moving through Congress right now. What is that looking at this point?
Right. So leave it to the Democrats. They're not going to let a good crisis go to waste. If they would gavel us in at the Senate floor in 5 minutes and said, will you vote in favor of $10 or $12 billion of more military and aid to help with their health and well-being, their food, it would probably pass 95-5. But what they want to do is they want to tie that funding to $22 billion more of COVID relief. They have over $100 billion of COVID relief that they've not used yet, but they want to borrow more money from not just your children, but your grandchildren. And then they want to tie it all to even to maybe the big omnibus to keep the government's lights on. So they're not going to let this crisis go to waste. We would love to vote on it independently by itself.
Wow, obviously that's always from the Democrats' playbook, and you're absolutely right. It's like, for them it's about spend, which means more inflation. But Senator Roger Marshall, stay with us. I still have a lot more to ask you. We'll be right back on America Uncanceled.
Well, Peter, if we go back to 6 months ago, I don't think anybody was predicting we would be exactly where we are as it relates to Russia and Ukraine. As you know, that events in the world, including the invasion by Russia of a foreign country, does prompt instability and volatility in the global oil markets. And there are all sorts of different issues that can impact that. That's what we're seeing now. Outside economists and analysts have conveyed and said publicly that Russia's invasion, Russia's buildup of troops, President Putin's decision to do that very early this year led to a lot of the instability and volatility in the oil markets.
So that was, of course, Fox News' Peter Doocy asking the press secretary, Jen Psaki, about the hashtag Putin price hike. Senator Roger Marshall, let me get your reaction to this, because basically the Biden administration saying, well, it's because of the invasion, it's because of troop buildup. This is why we're seeing this instability in the global oil market. Is that the whole truth?
It certainly is not the whole truth. This is Jen Psaki at her very, very best. This should be the hashtag Biden gas hike. This started the moment Joe Biden was sworn in. He declared war on American energy. I grew up in the oil patch. I live in the oil patch. And mostly he has this all of government war right now. So right now, some of the greatest, the long-term oil producers out there cannot get funding to go drill the wells. Only a third of our oil rigs right now are out there trying to drill new oil because they can't get funding. What the White House is doing is using this ESG wokeness through the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and the FDIC. They're telling banks, if you put these loans for oil and gas on your books, we're going to ding you and put you on probation. So this started the moment Joe Biden walked in there. Of course, we all know everyone talks about shutting down the pipeline. If he would have let that go forward, the pipeline would have already been done. We would have had more oil coming down that pipeline every day than what we've been buying from Russia. This is all in the back of Joe Biden.
So you bring up such a great point, and we're talking about the average gas price right now is about $4.25 per gallon. I don't know about you, but I've had every single relative of mine, every friend of mine just complain, Democrat, Republican, complain about the gas prices. And to them, they're saying, well, wait a second, how did we get to this? But when you have Joe Biden give you an answer like, well, I know, and Secretary Pete Buttigieg also saying, well, you know, you all are struggling to pay for your gas, so why don't you buy a $56,000 electric vehicle? I mean, give me a break. I mean, do you think that they just don't understand why our energy industry still we require fossil fuels to function?
Yeah, 2 points there is number one is they don't understand the American energy system. They really do think that they could just flip the switch and the oil would come in tomorrow. But literally, again, growing up in the oil patch, it will take a year for that investment, if it works, if we actually find oil when we dig, to actually be producing oil. And people need to realize the price of oil is traded upon the future and upon certainty. So if we knew that pipeline was going to be finished, that's what's going to bring down the price of oil and gasoline in the future. If we knew that President Biden was going to attack the oil that we're going to be having producing out of this well a year from now, we'd be inclined to open up more oil rigs. But again, the most successful people I know in the oil and gas industry, even with $135 a barrel oil, twice 250% higher than it was when Biden went into office, they're afraid to go drill because the oil that they'd be getting from that well a year later, they're afraid that they're going to be taxed on it. So the American energy system needs some certainty out of the White House that they're not going to continue this war on them.
Well, and you had this great tweet. We'll put it up on the screen. Joe Biden always talks about the importance of buying American. It's past time he actually follows through and buys into American energy. I mean, he's talking about negotiating with Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Iran. Saudi Arabia won't even take his call. UAE won't take his call. They're the ones that actually can pump millions of barrels of oil into basically into the system, into the energy system. And look where we are. I mean, could you believe that we're literally dependent on these authoritarian regimes?
Yeah. So, Mercy, this is why energy independence is so important, not just for economic freedom, but also for national security freedom. And can you think of anything more? I'm not sure what edge of use, any worse advice than to have the president go be asking Iran and Venezuela to help us out of this trouble instead of turning to American energy sources. He wants to help our enemies out. Look, again, Americans are much smarter than this. They understand that this White House has just fumbled every one of their decisions, and especially if there's any type of decision surrounding national security, the president doesn't understand the significance of this impacting hardworking Americans back home.
I do want to go to another topic here, that you introduced a bill requiring an ultrasound prior to pregnant women performing an abortion. Obviously, as a medical doctor, you understand this area very well. It's called the Ultrasound Informed Consent Act. Walk us through what the bill would do, and why do you think it was important to introduce this bill in the Senate?
Mercy, I'm an obstetrician, and for some 25 years, I got to deliver a baby most every day. This is my life's work, protecting the life of the unborn child as well as the mom. And doing an ultrasound before an abortion, I think number one, it protects the mom's health. I can't tell you how many times I've had to take care of complications of a botched abortion because they miscalculated how far along the baby was. Even seeing a situation where they pulled the arm off of a baby before they realized, oh my gosh, this baby's too far along and we'd be breaking a law to abort this pregnancy. So number one, it's for the safety of the mom and also for the psychology of the mom, for her psychosocial well-being. I just hope you and I both believe that life begins at conception. And every time I've been in that room with the mom, and maybe her husband's there with them, maybe not, and the first time they look on that ultrasound and they see that a baby's heart's beating a month after conception, and by 12, 14 weeks, there's little arms there, and by 15, 16 weeks, that baby's feeling pain, and it's responding to the ultrasound. You can just literally see us put the ultrasound probe on the mom, and when we kind of push, the baby kind of reaches up and pushes back. I think it just helps share with the mom that indeed they're ending the life of a precious creation of God. Yep. And there's so much remorse after. Folks don't realize the remorse that so many women have after this abortion, and just psychologically damage the rest of their lives.
That's a great point, and I just think having the psychological help as well. That's why these live pregnancy centers, I think, are so incredibly important across the country, because for a lot of women, they think that Planned Parenthood is their only option, and which, of course, as we know, Planned Parenthood encourages abortions. When many of those women that go there, they end up having the abortion and not knowing, not getting educated on the issue, not knowing that they have options, I think is so important in this process.
Yeah, Mercy, you're right. And I'm so grateful for all the men and women that are helping these programs to give women a second choice. We worked hard in my office on helping adopt babies out. And it's really simple to say, hey, you should adopt your baby out, but it takes a bigger effort than that. Catholic Social Services always was a great partner. So many other Christian organizations having these support programs out there that included the ultrasounds. I know there's one in Salina, Kansas, and in greater Wichita and greater Kansas City as well. So I sure do salute all those people that are helping us give women an alternative, and putting our time, our energy, and our minds where our mouth is.
Well, thank you for standing up for life and for standing up for women and our unborn babies. It is truly a miracle of life. As a mother of 5, it's such a blessing, each and every one of those of our children, and I think it's important to help let women know that they're not alone in this process. So thank you so much for joining us. Matt Schlapp is actually going to be out in Wichita, Kansas this weekend, having a book signing in Waterworks and several of these other areas in Kansas. So he's looking forward to going back home. I'll be here stuck in the swamp, but that's okay. It's okay. We'll get through it. But Senator Roger Marshall, we appreciate your insight, and we look forward to having you on soon again. This was really great.
Thanks, Mercy. Have a great day.
We'll be right back after this short break. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Remember that we're here Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. We want to keep talking to you about what's happening in the world and in our great country. Remember, if you missed any of the CPAC speeches or panels, just go to conservative.org. You can catch them there and watch them. I believe it's like a great little college course in conservative politics. Of course, it's a conservative college course, not the liberal one. And remember to follow us at CPAC, at Mercedes Schlapp, at M. Schlapp. We'll keep you posted on what is happening day in and day out in this crazy media world that we live in. But thank you all for joining us, and good night.